Richard William "Rick" Wright was an English musician, composer, singer and songwriter, best known for his career with Pink Floyd. A multi-instrumentalist, Wright's richly textured keyboard layers were a vital ingredient and a distinctive characteristic of Pink Floyd's sound. Wright frequently sang harmony and occasionally led vocals on stage and in the studio with Pink Floyd. Though not as prolific a songwriter as his bandmates Roger Waters, Syd Barrett and David Gilmour, he wrote significant parts of the music for classic albums such as Meddle, The Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here, as well as for Pink Floyd's The Division Bell. Early life, Wright, whose father was head biochemist at Undergate Dairies, grew up in Hatch End, North London and was educated at the Haberdashers' Ask School. Wright taught himself to play guitar, trumpet and piano at age 12, and took private lessons in musical theory and composition at the Eric Gilder School of Music. Uncertain about his future, he enrolled at Regent Street Polytechnic in 1962. There he met fellow band members Roger Waters and Nick Mason, was a founding member of the Pink Floyd sound in 1965, and also participated in its previous incarnations, Sigma 6 and the Abdubs. Although Mason and Waters were competent students, Wright found architecture of little interest and after only a year of study moved to the London College of Music. Pink Floyd 1967–1981. In the early days of Pink Floyd, Wright was a prominent musical force in the group. Wright wrote and sang several songs of his own during 1967–1968. While not credited for vocals on The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, he sang lead on Barrett-penned songs like Astronomy Domine and Matilda Mother, as well as harmonies on The Scarecrow and Chapter 24. Examples of his early compositions include Remember a Day, Seesaw, Paint Box, and It Would Be So Nice. As the sound and the goals of the band evolved, Wright became less interested in songwriting and focused primarily on contributing his distinctive style to extended instrumental compositions such as Cirrus Minor, Interstellar Overdrive, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, Careful with That Axe, Eugene, One of These Days, Dogs, and to musical themes for film scores. He particularly made essential contributions to Pink Floyd's long, epic compositions such as Atom Heart Mother, Echoes, and Shine On You Crazy Diamond. His most commercially popular compositions are The Great Gig in the Sky, and Us and Them from 1973's The Dark Side of the Moon. He also contributed significantly to other mid-period Floyd classics such as Breathe, and Time, singing the lead vocals on alternate verses of the latter with David Gilmour. Wright recorded his first solo project, Wet Dream, which was released in September 1978 with minimal commercial success. Battling both personal problems and an increasingly rocky relationship with Roger Waters, he was forced to resign from Pink Floyd during the Wall sessions by Waters, who threatened to pull the plug on the album if Wright did not leave the band. He was retained as a salaried session musician during the live concerts to promote that album in 1980–81. Wright became the only member of Pink Floyd to profit from the initial run of the costly Wall shows, since the net financial loss had to be borne by the three remaining full-time members. Wright did not attend the 1982 premiere of the film version of Pink Floyd The Wall. In 1983, Pink Floyd released The Final Cut, the only album from the band on which Wright does not appear. Later life, during 1984, Wright formed a new musical duo with Dave Harris called Z. They signed a record deal with EMI Records and released only one album, Identity, which was a commercial and critical flop. Wright worked as a salaried musician alongside Pink Floyd, following Waters' departure. Because of legal and contractual issues from this hired gun status during the Wall World Tour, his photo was not included in the 1987 album A Momentary Lapse of Reason and his name was listed in smaller letters than Mason and Gilmour. In 1994, by which time his reinstatement in the band had become official, he co-wrote 5 songs and sang lead vocals on one song for the next Pink Floyd album, The Division Bell. This recording provided material for the double live album and video release Pulse in 1995. Wright, like Nick Mason, performed on every Pink Floyd tour. Rick asked to be a part of A Momentary Lapse of Reason, and we talked and argued and negotiated again, and this time, The Division Bell he's on a percentage of everything, not just the record. Last time Nick and myself had put up all the money and taken all the risks on everything, including the lawsuits with Roger. If you take all the risks, you expect to get more of the profits, quite simply. This is a wonderful artistic endeavor we've spent all our adult lives working on, but reality comes into it as well. In 1996, inspired by his successful input into the division Bell, Wright released his second solo album, Broken China, including contributions from Shiner copyright Ad O'Connor on vocals, Pino Palladino on bass, Manu Katcher copyright on drums, Dominic Miller and Tim Renick, another Pink Floyd associate, on electric guitar. Broken China marked a new phase in Richard Wright's artistic development and playing style, with extensive use of computer-based recording and production techniques, assisted by Anthony Moore with whom he co-wrote the album's lyrics. On July 2, 2005, Wright, Gilmour and Mason were joined by Waters on stage for the first time since the Wall concerts for a short set at the Live 8 concert in London. This was the last time that all four Pink Floyd members performed together. Wright underwent eye surgery for cataracts in November 2005, preventing him from attending Pink Floyd's induction into the UK Music Hall of Fame. In 1999, keyboard player John Caron joined with Wright's wife to bring Wright and Waters back together after some 18 years apart. The two men met backstage after a tour date by Waters. Wright contributed keyboards and background vocals to David Gilmour's solo album, On an Island, and performed with Gilmour's touring band for over 24 shows in Europe and North America in 2006. On stage with Gilmour he performed on Hammond organ, piano, electric piano, Kurzweil K2600 workstation, and even his long and active Farfisa organ, which was used for performing echoes, and two of Pink Floyd's and Syd Barrett's older songs that Gilmour chose to revisit in his recent concerts. He also provided backing vocals and lead vocals. He declined an offer to join Roger Waters and Nick Mason on Waters' The Dark Side of the Moon Live tour in order to spend more time working on a solo project. On July 4, 2006, Wright joined Gilmour and Mason for the official screening of the Par Eurocent Where Eurocent La Eurocent Za Eurocent E DVD. Inevitably, Live 8 surfaced as a subject in an interview. When asked about performing again, Wright replied he would be happy on stage anywhere. He explained that his plan was to meander along and said about playing Live. And whenever Dave wants me to play with him, Euro unregistered trademark I'm really happy to play with him. And, to Gilmour Euro unregistered trademark LL play with me, right? Wright's final vocal performance took place at the Madcap's Last Laugh a tribute concert at the Barbican in London on May 10, 2007. It was organised by Joe Boyd in the memory of Syd Barrett who had died the previous July. Boyd rounded up many musical guests all paying their tributes to Syd including Captain Sensible, Chrissy Hind, Damon Albarn, Kevin Ayers, Kate McGarrigle with Martha Wainwright and Lily Lankin, Mike Herron, Nick Ledclose, Vashti Bunyan, Robin Hitchcock and performing solo, Roger Waters. Pink Floyd featuring David Gilmour, Nick Mason and Wright appeared at the end of the show as surprise guests where they performed the song that had started it all, Arnold Lane with Wright on lead vocals. Wright's final live performance was as part of David Gilmour's band at the premiere of Gilmour's concert DVD Remember That Night. It took place on September 6, 2007 at the Odeon Leicester Square, London. After an edited version of the film had been shown, the band took to the stage to jam and Wright played keyboards. Personal life: he married his first wife, Juliette Gale, in 1968. They had 2 children, Gala and Jamie, and divorced in 1982. He married his second wife Franca in 1984. They divorced in 1990. Wright married his third wife Mildred Millie Hobbs in 1995, with whom he had a son, Ben. Their marriage ended in 2007. From 1984 to 1994 he lived on the island Kefalonia. In 1996, Wright's daughter Gala married Guy Pratt, a session musician who has played bass for Pink Floyd and bandmate David Gilmour since Roger Waters' exit. In his later years, Wright lived in France and spent time on a yacht he owned in the Virgin Islands. Death: Wright died at home, of an undisclosed form of cancer, on September 15, 2008 at age 65. At the time of his death, he had been working on a new solo album, which was thought to comprise a series of instrumental pieces. His death occurred 1 week before the release of David Gilmour's Live and Door SKCD, on which he appeared. On July 6, 2014, it was announced that a new album, The Endless River, will be the first that Pink Floyd will release since 1994. The album, being released in fall of 2014, was begun during the 1994 recording session. Tracks played by Richard Wright will be included along with more original works by David Gilmour and Nick Mason. No one can replace Richard Wright. He was my musical partner and my friend. In the welter of arguments about who or what was Pink Floyd, Rick's enormous input was frequently forgotten. He was gentle, unassuming, and private, but his soulful voice and playing were vital, magical components of our most recognized Pink Floyd sound. I have never played with anyone quite like him. The blend of his and my voices and our musical telepathy reached their first major flowering in 1971 on Echoes. In my view, all the greatest PF moments are the ones where he is in full flow. After all, Without Us and Them and The Great Gig in the Sky, both of which he wrote, what would The Dark Side of the Moon have been? Without his quiet touch, the album Wish You Were Here would not quite have worked. In our middle years, for many reasons, he lost his way for a while. But in the early 90s, with The Division Bell, his vitality, spark and humor returned to him, and then the audience reaction to his appearances on my tour in 2006 was hugely uplifting, and it's a mark of his modesty that those standing ovations came as a huge surprise to him. Like Rick, I don't find it easy to express my feelings in words, but I loved him and will miss him enormously. Pink Floyd drummer Nick Mason told Entertainment Weekly. Like any band, you can never quite quantify who does what. But Pink Floyd would be Euro unregistered trademark T have been Pink Floyd if we hadn't had Rick. I think theory a Euro unregistered trademark SA feeling now a Euro, particularly after all the warfare that went on with Roger and David trying to make clear what their contribution was a Euro that perhaps Rick rather got pushed into the background. Because the sound of Pink Floyd is more than the guitar, bass, and drum thing. Rick was the sound that knitted it all together. He was by far the quietest of the band, right from day one. And, I think, probably harder to get to know than the rest of us. It's almost that George Harrison thing. You sort of forget that they did a lot more than perhaps their Euro unregistered trademark re-given credit for. Former bandmate Roger Waters' website was replaced with a photograph of an array of candles and poppies against a black background. One of the screen images used for the song Wish You Were Here in his Dark Side of the Moon Live tour. Waters issued a statement. I was very sad to hear of Rick's premature death. I knew he had been ill, but the end came suddenly and shockingly. My thoughts are with his family, particularly his children Jamie and Gala and their mum Juliet, who I knew very well in the old days, and always liked very much and greatly admired. As for the man and his work, it is hard to overstate the importance of his musical voice in the Pink Floyd of the 60s and 70s. The intriguing, jazz-influenced, modulations and voicings so familiar in Us and Them and Great Gig in the Sky, which lent those compositions both their extraordinary humanity and their majesty, are omnipresent in all the collaborative work the four of us did in those times. Rick's ear for harmonic progression was our bedrock. I'm very grateful for the opportunity that Live 8 afforded me to engage with him and David, Gilmour and Nick Mason that one last time. I wish there had been more. On September 23, 2008, David Gilmour performed Remember a Day, a Wright composition from Pink Floyd's second album, A Saucer Full of Secrets, on a live broadcast of Later. With Jools Holland on BBC Two as a tribute to Wright. In an interview later on in the show, Gilmour said that Wright had intended to perform with him that day, but that he had texted Gilmour a couple of weeks before his death to advise him that he would not be well enough to attend. This was the first live performance of the song by any member of the band. On September 15, 2008, Elton John, while playing a concert in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, dedicated the song believed to Wright, who had died earlier that day. Influence: Wright-style fused jazz, neoclassical and experimental music influences, which complemented the simple harmonic structures of the more blues and folk-based songs of Roger Waters and David Gilmour. As a keyboardist, he was more interested in complementing each piece with organ or synthesizer layers and tasteful piano or electric piano passages. Unlike his contemporaries Rick Wakeman, Tony Banks or Keith Emerson, he opted for solo playing only occasionally, notably in Atom Heart Mother, Echoes, Any Color You Like, Shine On You Crazy Diamond Parts 1 €5 and 6 €9, Welcome to the Machine, Dogs, Run Like Hell, and Keep Talking. Wright was known for his ghostly, atmospheric textures such as the Leslie piano arpeggios at the beginning of Echoes, the echoed Farfisa organ in the live versions of Careful with That Axe, Eugene, and set the controls for the Heart of the Sun, the distinctive Minimoog solo in Shine On You Crazy Diamond, and the Wurlitzer passages in Money, Time, and the Fender Rhodes riffs in Sheep. In A Saucer Full of Secrets, and Sisyphus he experimented with treated piano. Sisyphus also made extensive use of mellotron sounds, something of a rarity in the Pink Floyd canon. Equipment. In the early days of the band, Wright dabbled with brass before settling on the Farfisa compact duo electronic organ as his main instrument on stage. For a brief period in 1969, Wright played vibraphone on several of the band's songs and in some live shows, and he even played trombone on Biding My Time. During the formative years of Pink Floyd with Syd Barrett, Wright relied heavily on his Farfisa organ, fed through a Binson Echo Rec Platter Echo, to achieve distinctive sounds that helped the band gain their psychedelic rock edge. He used a mellotron on many Pink Floyd songs recorded in 1968, on Sisyphus, and on Atom Heart Mother. He started using a Hammond organ regularly on stage thereafter, and a grand piano later became part of his usual live concert setup when Echoes was added to Pink Floyd's regular set list. For tours in the 1970s based around The Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals in the Wall, the Farfisa was dropped, and an array of other instruments were added to the lineup, such as Fender Rhodes and Wurlitzer electric pianos, Hohner clavinet, VCS3, Minimoog, ARP string ensemble and Prophet 5, Roland D50 synthesizers. From 1987 Wright favored Kurzweil digital synthesizers for reproducing his analog synthesizer sounds, even though he still used his favorite Hammond B3 or C3 organ, along with Leslie's speaker system. According to Seth Goldman, Rick tried ear molds during the Division Bell tour, but he didn't get on with them. Throughout his career, Wright was also a proficient multi-instrumentalist. He also played violin, cello, bass, guitar, saxophone, and drums, amongst others. Pink Floyd songs with Wright singing lead vocals, Astronomy Domine, with Syd Barrett, Matilda Mother, with Barrett, Paint Box, It Would Be So Nice, Let There Be More Light, with David Gilmour and Roger Waters, Remember a Day, Corporal Clegg, with Gilmour and Nick Mason, Seesaw, Crumbling Land, with Gilmour, Summer 68, Echoes, with Gilmour, Burning Bridges, with Gilmour, Stay, Time, with Gilmour, Us and Them, with Gilmour, Wearing the Inside Out, with Gilmour, Discography, with Pink Floyd, see Pink Floyd Discography, with Syd Barrett. Barrett November 14, 1970, plays keyboards. Solo albums, Wet Dream September 15, 1978, US number 203, Broken China November 26, 1996, Z album, Identity April 9, 1984, with David Gilmour. David Gilmour in concert October 2002, appears on 2 tracks, Breakthrough, and Comfortably Numb. On an Island March 6, 2006, appears on 2 tracks, On an Island, and The Blue. Remember That Night September-November, BD, 2007, Living Gdor SK released on September 22, 2008, references. External links, The Richard Wright Archives, Pink Floyd's official site.